The Zephyrian High Command had never encountered a species quite like humans before. Ambassador Krikstal stood before the massive holographic display in the war room, his forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the data streaming across the screen. The blue-skinned alien's compound eyes reflected the harsh light as he absorbed the information about Earth's newest inhabitants. These creatures call themselves humans. Admiral Vexoth rumbled from his position at the tactical console. The massive reptilian warrior's scale shifted from deep green to amber, indicating his growing unease. They appeared in our galaxy barely 3 cycles ago, yet they've already established colonies on 17 worlds. Krikstal's mandibles clicked together in what passed for concern among his people. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this sector of space for over 10,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of species, absorbed their technologies, and built the most formidable military force the galaxy had ever seen. No newcomer had ever posed even the slightest threat to their dominance. What makes them different from the others? Krikstal asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Admiral Vexoth manipulated the holographic controls with his clawed hands, bringing up tactical assessments and battle reports. They fight like nothing we've ever encountered. Yesterday, a single human vessel disabled 3 of our patrol ships. Not destroyed, disabled. They could have annihilated our forces, but they chose not to. The ambassador's eyes narrowed. Mercy was not a concept the Zephyrians understood well. In their experience, showing weakness only invited further aggression. Perhaps they lacked the capability for decisive action? Negative! The Admiral's voice carried a note of grudging respect. Our analysis indicates their technology is centuries ahead of ours in certain areas. Their weapon systems alone could level our capital cities. Yet they use them with surgical precision. They target only military assets and avoid civilian casualties entirely. This revelation sent a chill through the command chamber. The other species they had encountered either cowered in fear or fought with desperate brutality. These humans demonstrated something far more dangerous. Controlled power combined with strategic thinking. War Commander Zektar, an insectoid warrior whose carapace bore the scars of 100 battles, stepped forward. Permission to speak freely, Ambassador? Krikstal gestured for him to continue. I've studied the combat recordings from our encounters with human forces. They don't fight like warriors seeking glory or conquest. They fight like protectors defending something precious. Every move is calculated. Every strike serves a purpose beyond mere destruction. The ambassador absorbed this information while studying the star charts. Human colonies formed a rough defensive perimeter around several uninhabited systems. At first glance, these empty regions seemed worthless, containing nothing but asteroid fields and dead planets. But strategic minds didn't waste resources protecting nothing. What lies within their defensive perimeter? Krikstal demanded. Admiral Vexoth highlighted the protected zone. Long-range scans detect massive construction projects on several worlds. Unknown energy signatures, sophisticated manufacturing facilities, and what appears to be extensive terraforming operations. They're building something significant. The implications were staggering. Most species required centuries to establish basic colonies. These humans were conducting advanced planetary engineering projects while simultaneously maintaining military superiority over established galactic powers. Their rapid expansion suggested either desperate urgency or supreme confidence. Have we attempted diplomatic contact? The ambassador inquired. Multiple times, War Commander Zektar replied. They respond politely but reveal nothing of strategic value. Their diplomatic corps speaks 17 different galactic languages fluently, demonstrates intimate knowledge of our cultures and histories, yet deflects every inquiry about their origins or intentions. Krikstal found this particularly unsettling. The Zephyrian Empire's vast intelligence networks had taken millennia to accumulate such comprehensive data about other species. These humans possessed equivalent knowledge after mere cycles in the galaxy, suggesting intelligence-gathering capabilities that bordered on the supernatural. What do our allies report about human activities? The ambassador asked. Admiral Vexoth's scales darkened to deep purple. That's where things become truly concerning. The Kraxi Confederacy attempted to probe human defenses last cycle. An entire battle fleet of 50 ships simply vanished without sending a single distress signal. The chamber fell silent. The Kraxi were renowned for their aggressive expansion policies and formidable military technology. Their disappearance represented the loss of enough firepower to conquer entire star systems. Survivors? Crystal's voice barely rose above a whisper. None. No wreckage, no escape pods, no trace of their passage. It's as if they never existed. War Commander Zektar pulled up additional reports. Similar incidents have occurred throughout the sector. The hegemony of Vel lost a reconnaissance squadron. The Stellar Dominion's advanced scouts never returned from human space. In each case, the missing forces simply ceased to exist. The ambassador's mind raced through the possibilities. Complete annihilation of entire fleets required weapons of unprecedented power, yet humans had demonstrated remarkable restraint in previous encounters. Either they possessed the ability to selectively apply overwhelming force, or something else entirely was happening to the missing ships. Have any human vessels been detected near the disappearance sites? Crystal asked. Negative, Admiral Vexoth confirmed. Long-range sensors show no human military activity in those regions. Whatever happened to our allies' forces occurred without any detectable human intervention. This revelation opened up disturbing new possibilities. Perhaps the humans possessed cloaking technology so advanced it rendered their ships completely invisible to all known detection methods. Or perhaps they had developed weapons that could strike across interstellar distances without leaving any trace of their origin. Crystal turned to face his assembled officers. Gentlemen, we face an unprecedented situation. A species has appeared in our galaxy possessing superior technology, strategic sophistication, and the apparent ability to make entire fleets disappear without a trace. Our traditional approaches to dealing with potential threats may prove inadequate. The ambassador paused, considering their limited options. Diplomacy had yielded no useful intelligence. Military probes had resulted in disappearances. Direct confrontation seemed increasingly unwise given the mounting evidence of human capabilities. However, Crystal continued, the Zephyrian Empire has not maintained galactic dominance for 10 millennia by retreating from challenges. We will discover the truth about these humans and their intentions, regardless of the cost. Admiral Vexoth's scales shifted to bright orange, indicating battle readiness. What are your orders, Ambassador? Crystal studied the star charts one final time, noting the positions of human colonies and the locations where Allied forces had vanished. A pattern was beginning to emerge, though its significance remained unclear. Prepare our finest warriors, the ambassador commanded. We will send a force so powerful, so well equipped, that even these mysterious humans cannot simply make it disappear. If they possess secret weapons or advanced technology, our warriors will discover them. If they have formed alliances with unknown powers, we will expose those connections. The assembled officers acknowledged their orders with grim determination. None of them truly believed they were making a wise decision, but Zephyrian pride demanded action. The galaxy's mightiest fighters would soon learn the truth about humanity, regardless of the consequences. The selection process for the Zephyrian strike force took 3 full cycles to complete. War Commander Zektar personally reviewed the service records of every candidate, seeking warriors whose skills transcended mere combat prowess. The mission required soldiers capable of gathering intelligence while fighting, survivors who could report back even under the most adverse conditions. Captain Thexera stood at attention before the assembled elite guard, her crimson battle armor gleaming under the artificial suns of the training facility. The veteran warrior had earned her rank through 2 decades of successful campaigns against hostile species. Her tactical innovations had become standard doctrine throughout the Empire's military academies. Each of you represents the pinnacle of Zephyrian military evolution. She addressed the 1,000 warriors before her. You have been selected not merely for your individual skills, but for your ability to function as a cohesive unit against unknown threats. The assembled fighters came from across the Empire's vast territories. Shock troopers whose exoskeletons could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons, stealth specialists whose natural camouflage made them nearly invisible, heavy weapons experts capable of operating equipment that could level city blocks, intelligence operatives trained to extract information from any source. Among them stood Sub-Commander Vixen, a young officer whose analytical mind had impressed even the most seasoned veterans. Unlike his peers who focused purely on combat excellence, Vixen studied enemy psychology and tactical philosophy. His reports often contained insights that traditional military thinking overlooked. Sir, Vixen approached Captain Thexera after the briefing. I've been analyzing the available data on human military capabilities. There are patterns in their behavior that suggest we may be facing something unprecedented. Captain Thexara's interest was immediately piqued. Vixen's observations had proven valuable in past campaigns, often revealing crucial details that others missed. Explain. Human military doctrine appears to prioritize preservation of life over territorial conquest, Vixen began, pulling up holographic displays of recent encounters. In every engagement, they demonstrate the capability to inflict massive casualties yet consistently choose minimal force options. This suggests either extreme confidence in their defensive capabilities or adherence to ethical principles that supersede military advantage. The captain studied the tactical analyses with growing concern. Most species fought with either desperate aggression or calculated brutality. Humans seem to operate according to entirely different priorities, making their behavior impossible to predict using conventional strategic models. What implications does this have for our mission? She asked. Vixen highlighted several combat recordings. If humans possess overwhelming military superiority but choose not to use it, our conventional assault tactics may prove counterproductive. They might interpret our attack as a test rather than a genuine threat, responding with precisely enough force to neutralize us without causing permanent damage. This possibility had not occurred to the mission planners. The Zephyrian military had always relied on superior firepower and aggressive tactics to overwhelm opponents. The concept of an enemy who could match their strength but chose restraint was entirely outside their experience. Captain Thexara forwarded Vixen's analysis to High Command while continuing preparations for departure. The strike force assembled around the battleship Dominion's Edge, a vessel equipped with the Empire's most advanced weapons systems and defensive technologies. Supporting craft included reconnaissance ships, heavy cruisers, and specialized vessels designed for specific tactical roles. Admiral Vexoth arrived to personally oversee the final preparations. His scaled hide had shifted to deep gray, indicating the serious nature of their undertaking. Captain, your force represents the finest warriors our empire has ever produced. Whatever secrets these humans possess, you will uncover them. Understood, Admiral, Captain Thexara replied. What are our rules of engagement? Gather intelligence through any means necessary, Admiral Vexoth commanded. If diplomatic contact proves possible, attempt to establish communication. If the humans prove hostile, respond with appropriate force. If they attempt to make you disappear like the others, ensure at least one ship escapes to report their methods. The final phrase sent an involuntary shiver through the assembled officers. None of them truly expected to simply vanish without a trace, yet the evidence suggested this fate had befallen several other military expeditions. The possibility of complete annihilation without even understanding the cause represented every warrior's worst nightmare. Sub-Commander. Vixen spent the voyage to human space conducting additional analysis of available intelligence. He studied historical records of first contact scenarios, looking for patterns that might explain human behavior. What he discovered only deepened the mystery surrounding Earth's inhabitants. Captain, Vixen reported as they approached the human defensive perimeter, I've identified something unusual about human colony placement. Their settlements don't follow standard resource acquisition patterns. Instead, they appear to be positioned to protect specific regions of space from outside interference. Captain Thexara joined him at the tactical display. The human colonies formed a rough sphere around several apparently empty star systems. Long-range scans detected unusual energy signatures within the protected zone, but their nature remained unclear. What could require such extensive protection? She wondered aloud. Unknown, Vixen admitted. However, the scale of their defensive preparations suggests whatever lies within that sphere holds tremendous significance for human civilization. They're not expanding randomly or seeking resources. They're specifically guarding something. The strike force entered human space without immediate challenge. Their sensors detected multiple observation posts tracking their movements, but no hostile actions materialized. Human monitoring stations simply recorded their passage and transmitted coded communications to unknown destinations. They know we're here, Captain Thexara observed. Yet they're making no move to intercept or challenge us. This passive response troubled her more than active hostility would have. Confident defenders who allowed potential threats to penetrate their territory either possessed overwhelming superiority or had prepared Devastating surprises for unwelcome visitors, sir. The communications officer reported, "We're receiving a transmission from human space traffic control." The message arrived in perfect Zephyrian, complete with appropriate cultural honorifics and formal protocol. The human speaker's voice carried no trace of hostility or concern, merely professional courtesy. "Zephyrian military vessel Dominion's Edge. You are entering restricted space. Please state your intentions and destination. We are prepared to provide navigation assistance and diplomatic liaison services if required." Captain Thexara exchanged glances with her officers. The humans were treating their armed invasion force as if it were a routine diplomatic mission. Either they failed to recognize the threat, or they were supremely confident in their ability to handle any situation that might develop. Respond that we are conducting a reconnaissance mission and request permission to establish communication with human military authorities, she ordered. The reply came within minutes. Permission granted. Escort vessels are being dispatched to guide you to a suitable meeting location. Please maintain current heading and velocity. Welcome to human space. Sub-Commander Vixen pulled up sensor readings of the approaching escort ships. The human vessels were smaller than their own, carrying unknown weapon configurations and propulsion systems that operated on entirely different principles from known technology. Analysis? Captain Thexara requested. Their ships don't register as threatening on our threat assessment systems. Vixen reported with obvious confusion. Either our sensors are malfunctioning, or human vessels are constructed using materials and technologies that our systems can't properly evaluate. The escort ships took position around the Zephyrian fleet with practiced precision. Their pilots demonstrated exceptional skill, maintaining perfect formation despite the obvious size and power differences between the vessels. No threatening gestures were made, yet their presence somehow conveyed absolute authority over the situation. Captain Thexara realized they had already lost control of their mission. Instead of conducting a military reconnaissance, they were being guided toward a location of human choosing, accompanied by ships whose capabilities remained completely unknown. The humans had transformed their invasion into a diplomatic visit, without firing a single shot or issuing a single threat. Whatever happened next would occur entirely according to human plans. The meeting location turned out to be a massive space station orbiting a gas giant in the outer reaches of the human defensive perimeter. Captain Thexara studied the structure through her ship's viewports, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. The station defied conventional engineering principles, appearing to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Sir," Sub-Commander Vixen reported from the sensor station, "our instruments are providing contradictory readings about the station's size and composition. According to gravitational sensors, its mass is approximately 50 million tons. According to visual assessment, it appears to be roughly twice the size of our largest orbital facilities. However, internal volume scans suggest it contains enough space to house our entire fleet." Captain Thexara frowned at the conflicting data. Zephyrian technology had never encountered materials or construction techniques that could produce such anomalous readings. The station seemed to exist according to different physical laws than the surrounding space. "Prepare a diplomatic shuttle," she ordered. "I'll meet with human representatives personally. Maintain defensive postures but avoid any actions that could be interpreted as hostile." The human escort ships guided their shuttle toward a docking bay that somehow expanded to accommodate their vessel despite appearing too small from the outside. Captain Thexara found herself questioning her own perceptions as they passed through what should have been solid hull plating. Inside the station, they were greeted by a human delegation led by a middle-aged woman wearing a simple blue uniform bearing no military insignia. Her appearance was unremarkable by human standards, yet something about her presence commanded immediate respect from everyone in the chamber. "Welcome to Diplomatic Station Harmony," the woman said in flawless Zephyrian. "I am Director Sarah Chen, representing the Human Colonial Administration. We appreciate your interest in establishing formal communications between our peoples." Captain Thexara found herself momentarily speechless. The humans' casual demeanor contrasted sharply with the technological marvels surrounding them. "Director." Chen spoke as if receiving armed alien fleets was routine business, rather than a potentially explosive first contact scenario. "I am Captain Thexara of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy," she managed to reply. "We seek information about human intentions in this sector of space." Director Chen gestured toward a conference room whose walls displayed real-time views of nearby star systems. Of course. Please, let's discuss this properly. I believe we can address most of your concerns quite easily. The conference room's technology impressed even Vixen, whose expertise in advanced systems was considerable. The displays showed not just visual representations but somehow conveyed tactile and even olfactory information about distant worlds. Standing before the wall felt like actually visiting those locations. Your people have been expanding rapidly through this region, Captain Thexara began, attempting to maintain a diplomatic tone despite her growing unease. Several of our allies have sent military expeditions to investigate your activities. Those forces have not returned. Director Chen's expression grew genuinely sad. Yes, we're aware of those tragedies. Unfortunately, the species you mention encountered hazards that we were unable to prevent in time. We've been working to establish better communication protocols to avoid similar incidents in the future. The word hazards struck Captain Thexara as oddly chosen. Director Chen spoke as if the missing fleets had encountered natural disasters rather than military action. What kind of hazards could destroy entire battle groups without leaving any trace? The space within our defensive perimeter contains phenomena that most species aren't equipped to handle safely, Director Chen explained. We maintain the protective barrier specifically to prevent accidental exposure to these dangers. Your allies unfortunately penetrated our defenses before we could warn them adequately. Subcommander Vixen leaned forward with obvious interest. What sort of phenomena require such extensive protective measures? Director Chen activated the wall displays showing the interior of the defended space. What appeared was unlike anything in the Zephyrians' experience. Streams of energy that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously flowed between artificial structures of impossible complexity. Space itself appeared to be folded and twisted according to principles that violated known physics. We call it a development zone, Director Chen said simply. Humanity is conducting experiments that require complete isolation from normal spacetime. The energies involved are incompatible with most forms of matter and could cause serious damage to unprepared vessels. Captain Thexara stared at the displays with growing horror. The humans weren't just building colonies or military installations. They were manipulating the fundamental structure of reality itself, conducting experiments that could theoretically affect entire star systems. What are you developing? She asked, though she wasn't certain she wanted to know the answer. Solutions, Director Chen replied cryptically. Humanity faces challenges that require unconventional approaches. Traditional technology and military force cannot address the problems we're working to solve. Vixen studied the energy patterns with fascination and terror. These experiments could affect surrounding star systems. Are you aware of the potential risks to other species? Completely, Director Chen confirmed. That's why we maintain such extensive safety protocols. The defensive perimeter isn't intended to keep others out. It's designed to prevent our activities from harming inhabited worlds. This revelation reframed everything the Zephyrians thought they understood about human intentions. Rather than aggressive expansion, humanity appeared to be conducting dangerous research while simultaneously protecting neighboring civilizations from the consequences. Why not simply conduct these experiments in uninhabited regions of space? Captain Thexara asked. Director Chen's expression grew somber. Because the phenomena we're working with don't respect normal spatial boundaries. Without proper containment, they could propagate across interstellar distances and affect inhabited systems throughout the galaxy. We chose this location specifically because it minimizes risks to established civilizations. The captain felt a chill as she grasped the implications. Humanity was conducting experiments so dangerous that containment failures could threaten entire galactic regions. Yet they had positioned themselves to bear the primary risks while protecting species who viewed them as potential enemies. The missing fleets, Vixen said quietly. They encountered these phenomena directly? I'm afraid so, Director Chen confirmed. We detected their approach and attempted to warn them, but communication protocols proved inadequate. By the time we could establish contact, they had already entered regions where their ship systems couldn't function safely. Captain Thexara began to understand the true scope of what they faced. The humans hadn't destroyed the missing fleets through military action. The ships had simply ceased to exist upon encountering forces beyond their technological ability to comprehend or survive. Could their crews have survived? She asked. Director Chen hesitated before answering. We recovered what we could. Some individuals were successfully extracted before complete system failure occurred. However, the process of exposure to our experimental environment tends to have profound effects on consciousness and memory. The implication was clear. The missing aliens hadn't been killed. They had been fundamentally changed by contact with whatever humanity was developing. The prospect of such transformation terrified Captain Thexara more than simple death would have. We should leave, she said abruptly. This conversation has provided sufficient information for our purposes. Director Chen nodded understanding. Of course. However, I should mention that your presence here has already exposed you to trace levels of the phenomena we're studying. The effects are minimal at this range, but you may notice some unusual experiences during your return journey. Vixen's instruments began registering anomalous readings throughout the station. Energy signatures that hadn't been present during their arrival now permeated the entire facility. Whatever the humans were doing, it was actively affecting the Zephyrian visitors. What kind of experiences? Captain Thexara demanded. Enhanced perception mainly, Director Chen explained. Temporary expansion of sensory capabilities. Occasional glimpses of alternative dimensional structures. Nothing harmful, but it can be disorienting for species not accustomed to multidimensional awareness. As if responding to her words, Captain Thexara began noticing details about the station that had been invisible moments before. Corridors that led to spaces larger than the structure could contain. Energy flows that somehow existed both inside and outside normal space. Technology that operated according to principles her mind could perceive but not comprehend. We need to leave immediately, she announced, fighting down rising panic. Director Chen escorted them back to their shuttle with obvious sympathy. The effects will fade once you're beyond our operational perimeter. However, you'll retain enough enhanced awareness to understand why we maintain such strict security protocols. I hope this helps your people make informed decisions about HFY. The journey back to the Dominion's edge became increasingly surreal, as the enhanced perceptions Director Chen had mentioned began manifesting throughout the Zephyrian strike force. Captain Thexara watched her. Officers struggled to interpret sensor readings that showed their own ships existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Sir, the shuttle pilot reported with obvious confusion. Our instruments indicate we're traveling both toward and away from the flagship at the same time. Navigation systems are providing contradictory guidance about our location relative to normal space. Sub-Commander Vixen studied his portable analyzers with fascination and growing alarm. The quantum resonance patterns around us are behaving according to principles that shouldn't be possible. It's as if space itself has become more flexible since our exposure to human technology. Captain Thexara could see what he meant. The shuttle's interior seemed larger than before, with additional dimensions becoming visible at the edges of her perception. She could sense the presence of her entire fleet, despite being enclosed within the small vessel's hull. The boundary between inside and outside had become somehow negotiable. When they reached the flagship, Captain Thexara immediately called for a full medical evaluation of all personnel who had visited the human station. The results were unlike anything in Zephyrian medical records. While their physical health remained unchanged, brain scans revealed new neural pathways that hadn't existed before their encounter with humanity. The additional neural structures appeared to be processing information from sources our instruments can't detect, Chief Medical Officer Catherine reported. Your crew members are receiving sensory input from dimensions beyond normal three-dimensional space. Remarkably, their minds seem to be adapting to handle this expanded awareness without psychological trauma. This development troubled Captain Thexara more than open hostility would have. Humanity had somehow altered her people simply through proximity, demonstrating capabilities that transcended conventional warfare entirely. They could change other species at the fundamental level without causing apparent harm. How long will these effects persist? She asked. Unknown, Chief Medical Officer Catherine admitted. The neural changes appear to be permanent. However, the enhanced perceptions seem to be fading as we move away from human space. Your people may retain the new neural pathways while losing access to the additional sensory input. Captain Thexara realized that her mission parameters had become meaningless. They hadn't gathered intelligence about human military capabilities in any conventional sense. Instead, they had been exposed to technology so advanced that it operated by rewriting the basic rules of reality around it. Captain, Communications Officer Dexmar reported, "We're receiving multiple transmissions from High Command requesting immediate status updates. Admiral Vexoth wants to know why we haven't reported our findings." The question of what to report had become impossibly complex. How could she explain that humanity possessed technology capable of fundamentally altering other species through casual contact? How could she describe experiments that made space itself more flexible? High Command would either dismiss her reports as impossible or panic at the implications. "Prepare a preliminary communication," she ordered. "Inform Admiral Vexoth that we have established contact with human authorities and are returning with significant intelligence about their capabilities." As they continued their journey back to Zephyrian space, Captain Thexara noticed that the enhanced perceptions weren't fading uniformly. Vixen seemed to retain more of the multi-dimensional awareness than other crew members. His analytical mind was somehow better equipped to process the additional sensory input. "Sir," Vixen approached her with obvious excitement, "I believe I'm beginning to understand what the humans are actually doing within their protected zone. The energy patterns we observed aren't just experiments. They're construction projects operating in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Captain Thexara gestured for him to continue, though she wasn't certain she wanted to hear his analysis. "They're building something that exists across multiple realities," Vixen explained. "The structure we glimpsed extends far beyond normal space into dimensions that most species can't even perceive. They're constructing a facility that can interact with alternate versions of our galaxy." The implications were staggering. If humans could access alternate realities, they potentially had infinite resources and unlimited strategic options. Traditional military thinking became meaningless when faced with opponents who could draw reinforcements from other dimensions. "What would require such capabilities?" Captain Thexara asked. Vixen displayed his readings on a portable viewer. "I believe they're preparing to address a threat that exists across multiple realities simultaneously. Something that can't be fought using conventional means because it operates beyond normal dimensional boundaries." This possibility had never occurred to Captain Thexara. Perhaps humanity's mysterious activities weren't preparation for conquest, but preparation for defense against something even more dangerous than their own advanced technology. "Do we have any information about what they might be defending against?" she inquired. "Negative," Vixen admitted. "However, the scale of their preparation suggests a threat that could affect entire galactic clusters across multiple realities. They're not just protecting their own territory, they're potentially protecting all of us from something we can't even perceive." As they approached the edge of human space, Captain Thexara noticed that the enhanced perceptions were indeed beginning to fade. The additional dimensions became less visible. The expanded awareness contracted back toward normal parameters. However, the memory of what she had experienced remained vivid and troubling. "Sir," the navigation officer reported, "we're receiving escort instructions from human space traffic control. They're providing navigation assistance to ensure we exit their territory safely." The human escort ships that had guided them inward now accompanied them outward, maintaining the same professional courtesy despite the obvious military nature of the Zephyrian force. Their pilots demonstrated the same exceptional skill, keeping perfect formation as they guided the alien fleet away from the protected zone. Captain Thexara realized that humanity had allowed them to penetrate their defenses, expose them to their most advanced technology, and then safely guided them away without ever treating them as a serious threat. The humans had demonstrated absolute control over the entire encounter while maintaining the pretense of diplomatic courtesy. As the escort ships turned back toward human space, Captain Thexara received a final transmission from Director Chen. "Thank you for visiting, Captain. I hope our conversation helps your people understand our position. Please be aware that the knowledge you've gained comes with certain responsibilities." The transmission ended before Captain Thexara could ask what those responsibilities might entail. As the human ships disappeared from their sensors, she found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about galactic politics and military strategy. Sub-Commander Vixen joined her on the bridge as they entered open space beyond human territory. "Sir, what are we going to tell High Command about what we've learned?" Captain Thexara stared at the empty space where the human escorts had vanished. I'm not certain we can explain what we've learned. Our language doesn't have concepts for what we experienced. The enhanced awareness was almost gone now, leaving only fragmentary memories of impossible perceptions and technologies that operated according to different physical laws. However, the knowledge that such things existed had permanently changed her understanding of what was possible in the universe. Perhaps that was the point, Vixen suggested. They wanted us to know that our conventional assumptions about reality are inadequate. They've shown us that there are threats and possibilities beyond our current comprehension. Captain Thexera nodded slowly. The humans hadn't destroyed them or turned them away. Instead, they had educated them about the true nature of their situation. The Zephyrian Empire's dominance of local space was an illusion. Humanity operated on levels of reality that made traditional military power irrelevant. The question now was, what to do with this knowledge? The journey back to the Dominion's edge became increasingly surreal, as the enhanced perceptions Director Chen had mentioned began manifesting throughout the Zephyrian strike force. Captain Thexara watched her. Officers struggled to interpret sensor readings that showed their own ships existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. "Sir," the shuttle pilot reported with obvious confusion, "our instruments indicate we're traveling both toward and away from the flagship at the same time. Navigation systems are providing contradictory guidance about our location relative to normal space." Sub-Commander Vixen studied his portable analyzers with fascination and growing alarm. "The quantum resonance patterns around us are behaving according to principles that shouldn't be possible. It's as if space itself has become more flexible since our exposure to human technology." Captain Thexara could see what he meant. The shuttle's interior seemed larger than before, with additional dimensions becoming visible at the edges of her perception. She could sense the presence of her entire fleet, despite being enclosed within the small vessel's hull. The boundary between inside and outside had become somehow negotiable. When they reached the flagship, Captain Thexara immediately called for a full medical evaluation of all personnel who had visited the human station. The results were unlike anything in Zephyrian medical records. While their physical health remained unchanged, brain scans revealed new neural pathways that hadn't existed before their encounter with humanity. The additional neural structures appear to be processing information from sources our instruments can't detect, Chief Medical Officer Catherine reported. "Your crew members are receiving sensory input from dimensions beyond normal three-dimensional space. Remarkably, their minds seem to be adapting to handle this expanded awareness without psychological trauma." This development troubled Captain Thexera more than open hostility would have. Humanity had somehow altered her people simply through proximity, demonstrating capabilities that transcended conventional warfare entirely. They could change other species at the fundamental level without causing apparent harm. "How long will these effects persist?" she asked. "Unknown," Chief Medical Officer Catherine admitted. "The neural changes appear to be permanent. However, the enhanced perceptions seem to be fading as we move away from human space. Your people may retain the new neural pathways while losing access to the additional sensory input." Captain Thexera realized that her mission parameters had become meaningless. They hadn't gathered intelligence about human military capabilities in any conventional sense. Instead, they had been exposed to technology so advanced that it operated by rewriting the basic rules of reality around it. "Captain," Communications Officer Dexmar reported, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from High Command requesting immediate status updates. Admiral Vexoth wants to know why we haven't reported our findings." The question of what to report had become impossibly complex. How could she explain that humanity possessed technology capable of fundamentally altering other species through casual contact? How could she describe experiments that made space itself more flexible? High Command would either dismiss her reports as impossible or panic at the implications. "Prepare a preliminary communication," she ordered. "Inform Admiral Vexoth that we have established contact with human authorities and are returning with significant intelligence about their capabilities." As they continued their journey back to Zephyrian space, Captain Thexara noticed that the enhanced perceptions weren't fading uniformly. Vixen seemed to retain more of the multi-dimensional awareness than other crew members. His analytical mind was somehow better equipped to process the additional sensory input. "Sir," Vixen approached her with obvious excitement, "I believe I'm beginning to understand what the humans are actually doing within their protected zone." The energy patterns we observed aren't just experiments. They're construction projects operating in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Captain Thexera gestured for him to continue, though she wasn't certain she wanted to hear his analysis. They're building something that exists across multiple realities, Vixen explained. The structure we glimpsed extends far beyond normal space into dimensions that most species can't even perceive. They're constructing a facility that can interact with alternate versions of our galaxy. The implications were staggering. If humans could access alternate realities, they potentially had infinite resources and unlimited strategic options. Traditional military thinking became meaningless when faced with opponents who could draw reinforcements from other dimensions. What would require such capabilities? Captain Thexera asked. Vixen displayed his readings on a portable viewer. I believe they're preparing to address a threat that exists across multiple realities simultaneously. Something that can't be fought using conventional means because it operates beyond normal dimensional boundaries. This possibility had never occurred to Captain Thexera. Perhaps humanity's mysterious activities weren't preparation for conquest, but preparation for defense against something even more dangerous than their own advanced technology. Do we have any information about what they might be defending against? She inquired. Negative, Vixen admitted. However, the scale of their preparation suggests a threat that could affect entire galactic clusters across multiple realities. They're not just protecting their own territory, they're potentially protecting all of us from something we can't even perceive. As they approached the edge of human space, Captain Thexera noticed that the enhanced perceptions were indeed beginning to fade. The additional dimensions became less visible. The expanded awareness contracted back toward normal parameters. However, the memory of what she had experienced remained vivid and troubling. Sir, the navigation officer reported, we're receiving escort instructions from human space traffic control. They're providing navigation assistance to ensure we exit their territory safely. The human escort ships that had guided them inward now accompanied them outward, maintaining the same professional courtesy despite the obvious military nature of the Zephyrian force. Their pilots demonstrated the same exceptional skill, keeping perfect formation as they guided the alien fleet away from the protected zone. Captain Thexera realized that humanity had allowed them to penetrate their defenses, expose them to their most advanced technology, and then safely guided them away without ever treating them as a serious threat. The humans had demonstrated absolute control over the entire encounter while maintaining the pretense of diplomatic courtesy. As the escort ships turned back toward human space, Captain Thexera received a final transmission from Director Chen. Thank you for visiting, Captain. I hope our conversation helps your people understand our position. Please be aware that the knowledge you've gained comes with certain responsibilities. The transmission ended before Captain Thexera could ask what those responsibilities might entail. As the human ships disappeared from their sensors, she found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about galactic politics and military strategy. Sub-Commander Vixen joined her on the bridge as they entered open space beyond human territory. Sir, what are we going to tell High Command about what we've learned? Captain Thexera stared at the empty space where the human escorts had vanished. I'm not certain we can explain what we've learned. Our language doesn't have concepts for what we experienced. The enhanced awareness was almost gone now, leaving only fragmentary memories of impossible perceptions and technologies that operated according to different physical laws. However, the knowledge that such things existed had permanently changed her understanding of what was possible in the universe. Perhaps that was the point, Vixen suggested. They wanted us to know that our conventional assumptions about reality are inadequate. They've shown us that there are threats and possibilities beyond our current comprehension. Captain Thexera nodded slowly. The humans hadn't destroyed them or turned them away. Instead, they had educated them about the true nature of their situation. The Zephyrian Empire's dominance of local space was an illusion. Humanity operated on levels of reality that made traditional military power irrelevant. The question now was, what to do with this knowledge? The return to Zephyrian space proved more challenging than Captain Thexera had anticipated. As the enhanced perceptions completely faded, her crew began experiencing what Chief Medical Officer Catherine described as dimensional withdrawal symptoms. Officers who had briefly perceived multiple realities simultaneously now felt confined within normal three-dimensional space. It's like losing a sense you never knew you possessed. Sub-Commander Vixen explained during their approach to the home system. I can remember seeing beyond normal space, but I can no longer access those perceptions. The universe feels smaller somehow. Captain Thexara understood his frustration. She retained vivid memories of the human station existing in multiple dimensions, but her current perceptions showed only conventional three-dimensional structures. The experience had revealed limitations in her own awareness that she had never known existed. "Sir," Communications Officer Dexmar reported, "Admiral Vexoth is requesting immediate docking at Fleet Command. He wants a full debriefing before we're allowed to communicate with anyone else." This restriction troubled Captain Thexara. High Command apparently suspected that their mission had uncovered information requiring careful handling. She wondered if other expeditions had returned with similar disturbing intelligence about human capabilities. Fleet Command's massive orbital station dominated the star system's primary asteroid belt. The facility had served as the Zephyrian Empire's military headquarters for over 3,000 years, its weapons platforms and defensive systems representing the pinnacle of their technological achievement. Now, having seen human engineering capabilities, Captain Thexara recognized how primitive their most advanced installations truly were. Admiral Vexoth met them personally at the docking bay, his scales displaying deep purple patterns that indicated extreme concern. "Captain, your preliminary reports have caused considerable discussion among the High Command. We need to understand exactly what you encountered in human space." The debriefing chamber was equipped with advanced recording systems designed to capture every detail of intelligence reports. Captain Thexara found herself struggling to describe experiences that seemed increasingly unreal as time passed. How could she explain technology that operated in multiple dimensions to officers who had never perceived beyond normal space? "These humans possess capabilities that transcend our understanding of physics," she began. "Their technology doesn't just use advanced materials or energy sources. It operates according to different fundamental principles entirely." War Commander Zektar interrupted with obvious skepticism. "Are you suggesting they've discovered new laws of physics unknown to our scientists?" "I'm suggesting they operate beyond the laws of physics as we understand them," Captain Thexara replied. "Their facilities exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their experiments manipulate the basic structure of space-time itself." The assembled officers exchanged glances that ranged from disbelief to alarm. Such claims challenged the basic assumptions underlying Zephyrian military doctrine and technological development. Admiral Vexoth activated the chamber's holographic displays. "Show us your evidence for these extraordinary assertions." Captain Thexara had Vixen present his sensor readings from their visit to the human station. The data was fragmentary and contradictory, showing energy signatures that registered as both present and absent, structural dimensions that exceeded the containing space, and gravitational readings that suggested the station somehow massed more than the star system that contained it. "These readings are impossible," Chief Scientist Mordak declared after studying the data. "No known technology could produce such contradictory measurements. Your instruments must have malfunctioned during exposure to unknown energy fields." Sub-Commander Vixen stepped forward with obvious frustration. "Sir, I've verified these readings multiple times. Our instruments weren't malfunctioning. They were detecting phenomena that our current scientific models can't explain." The debate continued for hours, as the High Command struggled to interpret intelligence that challenged their fundamental understanding of reality. Some officers dismissed the reports as sensor errors or misinterpretation of advanced but conventional technology. Others argued that the implications were too dangerous to ignore. "Assuming these reports are accurate," Ambassador Krikstal interjected, "what are the strategic implications for the Empire?" Captain Thexara had been dreading this question. Traditional military planning becomes meaningless when dealing with opponents who can manipulate reality itself. Our weapons, defenses, and tactical doctrines are all based on assumptions that may not apply to human technology. Admiral Vexoth's scales shifted to orange, indicating battle readiness despite the disturbing nature of the intelligence. "Could we develop countermeasures against these capabilities?" "Unknown," Captain Thexara admitted. "However, the humans demonstrated the ability to alter our personnel simply through proximity to their technology. They could potentially modify our entire population without using conventional weapons." This revelation caused visible distress among the assembled officers. The possibility of being changed at the fundamental level without their knowledge or consent represented a form of warfare they had never conceived. Chief Medical Officer Catherine presented his analysis of the neural changes observed in the expedition members. The modifications appear to be beneficial rather than harmful. The affected personnel show enhanced cognitive capabilities and expanded sensory potential. However, the implications of involuntary consciousness alteration are obviously concerning. War Commander Zektar studied the medical data with growing unease. Could these humans modify our entire species without our knowledge? Based on what we observed, it seems possible, Captain Thexera confirmed. Their technology operates at levels that could affect entire star systems. Individual biological modification would be relatively simple for beings capable of manipulating space-time itself. The chamber fell silent as the officers contemplated the implications. The Zephyrian Empire had maintained galactic dominance through superior military technology and aggressive expansion policies. Against opponents who could rewrite the rules of reality, such advantages became meaningless. Ambassador Krickstahl broke the silence. Captain, in your assessment, do these humans represent a direct threat to the Empire? Captain Thexara considered her response carefully. They possess the capability to destroy us completely, but they've shown remarkable restraint in their interactions with other species. Their actions suggest they're focused on defending against something rather than pursuing conquest. Defending against what? Admiral Vexoth demanded. Something that operates across multiple realities, Subcommander Vixen interjected. Based on the energy patterns we observed, they're preparing to face a threat that exists beyond normal dimensional boundaries. The concept of multidimensional threats was beyond the experience of any Zephyrian military officer. Their strategic planning had always assumed that conflicts would occur within normal spacetime, using conventional physics. Could this threat affect us as well? War Commander Zektar asked. If it operates across multiple realities, it could theoretically affect any civilization in any dimension, Vixen replied. The humans may be protecting all of us from something we can't even perceive. Admiral Vexoth absorbed this information while studying star charts of human territory. What are your recommendations for future interactions with this species? Captain Thexara had been preparing for this question throughout the return journey. Avoid provoking them at all costs. Their restraint appears to be voluntary rather than imposed by limitations. We don't want to discover what happens when they decide to stop being cooperative. The recommendation effectively meant abandoning any plans for expansion into human space or aggressive action against their colonies. For an empire built on military conquest, such advice represented a fundamental challenge to their identity and strategic doctrine. Are you suggesting we simply accept human dominance of that entire sector? Ambassador Krickstahl asked. I'm suggesting we recognize that traditional concepts of dominance don't apply to beings who can manipulate reality itself, Captain Thexara replied. Our survival may depend on earning their tolerance rather than challenging their authority. The High Command spent the remainder of the session debating response options, each more inadequate than the last. How could a conventional military force respond to opponents who operated beyond the normal rules of physics? The galaxy's mightiest fighters had encountered something that made their strength irrelevant. 3 cycles after Captain Thexara's return, the Zephyrian High Command reached a decision that would have been unthinkable before their encounter with humanity. Ambassador Krickstahl stood before the assembled Imperial Council, his forearms trembling slightly as he prepared to deliver recommendations that challenged 10,000 years of military doctrine. Honored counselors, he began, after extensive analysis of intelligence gathered from human space, we must acknowledge that our traditional approach to galactic relations requires fundamental revision. Elder Mortakis, whose ancient carapace bore the scars of countless campaigns, raised his primary manipulator in question. Are you suggesting the Empire should abandon its rightful position as the dominant force in this sector? Ambassador Krickstahl had anticipated this challenge. I'm suggesting that our concept of dominance has become obsolete. We face a species whose capabilities transcend our understanding of what dominance means. The council chamber erupted in discussion as representatives from across the Empire debated the implications. Some argued for increased military buildup to counter the human threat. Others demanded immediate diplomatic initiatives to establish peaceful relations. A few suggested withdrawing from human space entirely. What evidence supports such extraordinary claims? Demanded General Vakthor, whose military record included successful campaigns against 17 different species. Ambassador Kriegstall activated the chamber's holographic displays, showing footage from Captain Thexara's mission. The images of the human station existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously drew gasps of amazement and disbelief from the assembled counselors. Our finest military scientists have been unable to explain these phenomena using known physical principles, the ambassador explained. We are dealing with technology that operates according to rules we don't understand. Elder Mortakis studied the impossible images with obvious fascination. These humans, they offered no explanation for their capabilities. They described their activities as defensive preparations against threats that operate across multiple realities. Ambassador Kriegstall replied, They appear to be protecting not just their own territory, but potentially our entire dimensional region from dangers we cannot perceive. This revelation shifted the debate from questions of military response to considerations of mutual survival. If humans were defending against multidimensional threats, their activities might be essential for the safety of all galactic civilizations. General Vakthor remained skeptical. Why should we trust the explanations of a species that could destroy us at will? Their claims of defensive purposes could be elaborate deception, designed to prevent interference with their expansion plans. Because they had no need for deception, Ambassador Kriegstall replied, They demonstrated the ability to alter our personnel at the fundamental level simply through proximity. If they intended conquest, they could have modified our entire expedition to serve their purposes. The Council considered this logic while reviewing medical reports from the returning expedition members. The neural modifications remained stable, apparently enhancing cognitive capabilities without causing any detectable harm. What became of the other expeditions that entered human space? Elder Mortakis inquired. Ambassador Kriegstall's expression grew somber. According to human authorities, they encountered experimental phenomena that their technology couldn't handle safely. Some crew members were rescued, but the exposure process fundamentally altered their consciousness. The implication was clear. The missing fleets hadn't been destroyed through military action. They had been transformed by contact with forces beyond their ability to comprehend or survive unchanged. Could we retrieve these survivors? General Vakthor asked. Unknown, the ambassador admitted. The humans indicated that the transformation process has profound effects on memory and consciousness. The individuals we might recover would no longer be recognizable as their original selves. Council member after council member struggled with the implications of humanity's capabilities. Traditional military responses seemed not just inadequate but potentially catastrophic. Attacking beings who could rewrite reality itself would likely result in consequences beyond their ability to imagine. What specific actions do you recommend? Elder Mortakis finally asked. Ambassador Kriegstall had prepared his proposals carefully, knowing they would challenge fundamental assumptions about imperial policy. First, we establish formal diplomatic relations with human authorities. Second, we offer assistance with their defensive preparations if such aid would be useful. Third, we warn other species about the dangers of unauthorized intrusion into human space. General Vakthor stood abruptly, his scales shifting to bright red, indicating extreme agitation. You're asking the Empire to become a junior partner to aliens who appeared in our galaxy mere cycles ago. I'm asking the Empire to recognize reality, Ambassador Kriegstall replied calmly. Our choice is not between dominance and subordination. Our choice is between cooperation and irrelevance. The debate continued for days as the Council grappled with decisions that would reshape their civilization's future. Some members argued for maintaining traditional policies despite the obvious risks. Others pushed for even more dramatic changes in imperial doctrine. Meanwhile, Captain Thexara received new orders that reflected the Empire's changing priorities. Instead of leading military expeditions, she was assigned to establish the Empire's first formal diplomatic mission to human space. Her experience with human technology made her the obvious choice for such unprecedented responsibilities. Sub-Commander Vixen requested permission to accompany the diplomatic mission, driven by scientific curiosity about the multidimensional phenomena they had encountered. His enhanced neural pathways, remnants of exposure to human technology, might prove valuable for understanding their advanced capabilities. Sir, Vixen approached Captain Thexera as she prepared for the diplomatic assignment. I've been analyzing the long-term implications of human activities. If they're truly preparing defenses against multidimensional threats, the entire galaxy may depend on their success. Captain Thexera had reached similar conclusions during her own analysis. What do you think they're defending against? Something that exists outside normal space-time, Vixen replied. The energy patterns we observed suggest they're building barriers against forces that could consume entire realities. We may be witnessing preparation for a conflict that will determine the survival of our universe. The possibility was both terrifying and oddly comforting. If humanity possessed the capability to defend against such cosmic threats, their advanced technology represented salvation rather than conquest. The Zephyrian Empire's survival might depend not on military strength, but on earning humanity's protection. Have you shared this analysis with High Command? Captain Thexera asked. Yes, Vixen confirmed. It's part of what convinced the Council to authorize diplomatic contact. We need to understand what we're facing and determine how we can contribute to humanity's defensive efforts. Captain Thexera realized that her new mission represented more than just establishing diplomatic relations. She would be negotiating the Empire's role in a cosmic conflict they barely understood, seeking partnership with beings whose capabilities transcended their comprehension. The galaxy's mightiest fighters had discovered something more important than military victory. They had found protectors whose strength operated on levels that made conventional warfare obsolete. Now they faced the challenge of proving themselves worthy of alliance with humanity, in a struggle that would determine the fate of reality itself. As her diplomatic vessel prepared for departure, Captain Thexera wondered whether the Zephyrian Empire would emerge from this encounter as humanity's allies, or simply as another species under their protection. Either outcome seemed preferable to the alternative of facing multidimensional threats without humanity's advanced defenses.